Now in its 17th year, the Campus Safety Director of the Year program recognizes K-12, higher ed, and hospital police chiefs, security directors, emergency managers, or heads of security and public safety who demonstrate outstanding leadership skills, ingenuity, and selflessness. We name the winner for each sector at our Campus Safety Conference. The nomination materials we receive are full of impressive accomplishments and collaborations. We briefly outlined these achievements on our website, but wanted to further honor the nominees in their hard work by conducting interviews where they can elaborate on some of those successes. In these interviews, finalists share some of their challenges and subsequent solutions they've implemented. We hope campuses that may be considering similar endeavors find value and guidance in these discussions. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Campus Safety Voices podcast. I'm here today with Joseph Hough, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Auxiliary Services and School Safety at Buncombe County Public Schools in North Carolina. And he's also a 2024 Campus Safety Director of the Year finalist. And we're going to talk about some of his recent accomplishments. Let's start with your district's front office reconfiguration. Sounds like a massive undertaking, both monetarily and logistically, particularly at older schools, where front offices are often set back from the entrance. What motivated you to start this project?
Well, thank you, Amy. I appreciate the interview, and I always a joy to talk to folks about safety and security. Any school system is going to tell you safety is the number one priority, and I will tell you Buncombe County it certainly is here. We try every so often to ask for an outside auditor to come in I'll say at least every 5 years, because we're not necessarily security experts. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. We could do quite a bit just from our experiences and working with law enforcement area, but we really want the best cutting edge look. So we had in 2018, we had an outside vendor come in and just do a really good safety and security audit. And that's what started it. And they came back with recommendations. After that, with the recommendations, we went into an implementation phase. One of them was front office reconfiguration. And you kind of already said that, what that is. We have got schools in our system. The oldest one is 1920. And a lot of schools back then probably didn't have to deal with safety and security like we do today. And a lot of the schools had the front office that may be recessed. When you get buzzed in the front door, you might have 2 or 3 hallways to the left and right before you ever get to the main office. And with things like we've seen with Sandy Hook, and that person after they shot out the glass went in and that office was recessed, they had 2 hallways they can go left or right. Well, this actually puts us in a situation where what we're trying to do is we're trying to make that office right there part of that front door. And we actually use a term called the 2 vestibule system. You can see where you walk in the front door, you basically have your screen, get all your visitation, all that. There's a bulletized wall and bulletized glass for the receptionist. And then they pass through a second area, in which case there's a pass-through window. So hopefully most of the time folks come in, they just need to pass like a permission slip or a set of keys for the kid. And that's all the business that they have. This actually gives us a chance to screen a little bit more who's coming into the school. Once you screen, they go into a second area so that they wait on, let's say, a parent-teacher conference or a bigger window they can pass a book bag through. So it just adds that element of security. And that's the kind of stuff we learned from the Sandy Hook situation. And it's not all about a shooter scenario. Sometimes it's just a parent that's very passionate. Let's put it that way. And has an issue with a teacher that we have a chance to maybe calm them down a little bit, so we don't get into a situation where once they buzz through the door, they take off down a hallway because they know the room that their student is in and where the teacher is. So it just gives us that extra element to really kind of handle a situation before we get too far. And it just comes back from having all those schools so old in our system. We got to get them updated for safety and security. So that's just a quick summary on a little deeper summary on what front office reconfiguration is all about. And yes, we learned this, and it is a huge undertaking because it's, as you can imagine, it's got some dollar figures to it. If we're fortunate enough, it's not too far off the front, we could do it for under $1 million. But some of the ones where we've got to literally take an adjacent classroom right beside the front door and switch it from wherever that office is obviously we're going to be up in the million or even over. So we've done that now for about 7 schools, and we've got 3 that are undergoing right now, and we try to get at least 2 in a year.
And now I know clearly, I'm sure there are a lot of challenges that came along with this big project, but what were some of the challenges you had to overcome, whether they were anticipated or not? And also as you continue to work to install these double vestibules at, around 30 schools.
Well, we knew with the range of buildings that we had that would be our biggest one, because we got 45 schools and no 2 schools are really the same. We have some that kind of resemble, and that does help when you start doing your estimations as far as your design work and all that. That maybe there's a school or 2 when you go to have it designed, you can say, well, it's very similar to this other, but those are few and far between. Like I said, we got 45 ranging all the way back to 1920. So the chart that I put up just a few minutes ago, that was really our template design. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So we're using that, and just knowing that as long as we achieve that 2 vestibule type system, and knowing that we're going to have to adjust it for certain schools, especially from the sense of what are we going to take away or swap out, because we might not always have a classroom right beside that front door. We might have to get more creative than that. So, having the basic design was there, but it was a matter of, no 2 schools really the same. You had to kind of adjust it to get what you wanted, which is that 2 vestibule format.
Now, how did you go about funding for this project? I know you had mentioned a dollar total, but how did you go about funding it?
Good question. Well, I will say in the state of North Carolina, we are blessed. We do get local capital funds, but our state also gives us safety and security funds as well. We have a partnership for that with mental health needs, a partnership with our sheriff's department that we can get kind of a split with the money between some of the state money comes in, so we can have SROs, and then that gets shared with our local sheriff's office. But one of the big one is there are some of those monies that are designated from the state in that grant process or to some capital improvements. So that was a big help. And then the other one, something that Buncombe County is specifically, we had a legislator several years ago, and I love to tell this story. We call it Article 39. That's very specific to us, just by title, where it gets a portion of a cent sales tax here locally that goes toward big capital projects over $100,000. The background story that I like to share, there was a late senator, who was passed recently, but we have a alternative school, STEM high school, excuse me, that's named after him. It's Martin Nesbitt, and it's Nesbitt Academy. Well, several years ago, Buncombe County, through some trade magazine for education, decided to put Buncombe County schools in Asheville, North Carolina, on a title of a document called the Dilapidated Dozen. Our schools were really just in poor shape, apparently. And the thing we learned from that, I guess, administration, sometimes bad publicity can end up being a good thing for you, because Martin Nesbitt took a hold of that article and said, we will do something about whether true or not about Buncombe County schools. We're going to do something to make sure our schools are updated. So we have a portion of a cent sales tax in Buncombe County that allows us big projects. And my understanding, we have 115 LEAs, local educational agencies or school systems in the state of North Carolina. My understanding, we're only one of 2 that has that extra local tax resource that we can use. So here again, we'll always need more. I can't think of a single school that would say they have all the money they need, but I will tell you, we're blessed at what North Carolina does for us. We're blessed in what Buncombe County does for us.
That's wonderful. When you said a trade magazine, I was like, it's not campus safety, is it?
I don't think it's campus safety. I think you're okay.
I also read in your Director of the Year submissions that the standard has become to do construction at one large and one small school each summer until all of them are retrofitted. What were the reasonings for this?
Well, anything we deal with when it comes to trying to update a school with 45 schools, equity is going to come up quickly. And the principals will be real quick to do that too. If one school's getting something, they want to know why their school's not getting it. One of the things that our outside agency did for us is not only with those recommendations for us capital, they did an overall security score for each school, and they put in several things. Well, what is crime rate in the area? how did your school score on these different things, your doors and those type of things. And they put them on a score 1 through 45. So we use that so that we can be fair from because we want those that didn't have a good score to get updates quicker and hopefully improve their safety and security based on that assessment. Another thing that we did is we always have that battle, and I know the state as far as who gets what monetary resources, big counties versus small counties. And one of the things our state does is they do try to put a formula in with counties that don't have a lot of tax-based revenue. So it's something we learned from the state. So we make sure that in that mix that we do one for a very small, large school. Obviously, it's going to have a lot more. They have a lot more doors. They have a lot more land and all that. So to be fair, we just try to make sure we do one large and one small, along with that scale of where they scored. Just trying to be as equitable and fair as possible.
And now you've had some completed. What impacts have you seen so far since then?
Well, the very first school we did, I love that question because just like I said, it's not only for shooter light situations, but sometimes you just have a parent that's being passionate or overly passionate and just trying to advocate for their kid or their student, I should say. And we did have at the very first school that we completed over the summer, and we normally can complete these over the summer. Some of the big ones we start actually demolition and start up in spring break to be done by the next school year. The very first one we did, a very upset parent came in and just really needed a minute to calm down because before they did something they would regret going straight, being buzzed in and run to. This parent would have done it. There's no question they were that upset and we'd have been running after them. So the fact that they came in, they went to that second set of doors that goes to that other side where it's the bigger room. Even if they'd have gotten through that, there's that last set of doors because it's a double vestibule system. And just being able to get an SRO there a little bit quicker to really, and a principal there quicker, just to get them calm down. Listen, we're going to resolve whatever it is. But if we hadn't had that, we'd have had a very difficult situation, and it proved itself immediately.
That's great. And now moving on to your door security training. In your role, you've also focused on training regarding door security. Can you tell listeners about the project that is currently underway and also about the system that you've implemented in the meantime to ensure redundancy and how you came up with that idea?
Exactly. Well, I'm going to actually start with the latter part first, and then because you're right. We had something that we were doing, still do, because we want to have redundant means of door security. And I'm going to show a little chart here in just a minute. So up until we got to some of the latest technology, it was all about teaching your teachers, your staff, and students. And one of the simplest things we did, in case that if you know a little bit about your doors on the crash bar, typically you've got a little wheel mechanism that the latch will come by and click and be forward of. So I'm going to show this to you real quick. And this is, I call it the safety dot. And on that little piece that comes in front of the wheel, it was latched. So you basically just take the dot and put it on that latch. And you can look at very simple at the comparison between the two. That one that's in red has not come past that roller yet. And if you're walking a good 10, 15, 20, you can see a yellow circle in full versus one that you don't see in full. And what we teach the staff and the teachers and the kids even, and I tell you, elementaries eat this up. They want to be on safety patrol. So if they ever see it, they're quick. We tell them, if you ever see it, pull it to, and then go find an administrator, custodian, or somebody and say, we have an unsecured door. So, and the nice thing about this, you're talking about 2,000 doors, exterior doors for our county. And when we're talking millions of dollars, like we're just talking front office reconfiguration, I think I'm sure I paid under $1,000 or $500 for 2,000 some odd little yellow circles. And that's always a success story whenever you can find things that improve security that did not break the bank. So, and that was just one. The other thing we teach, we put these, this was actually an idea of one of our schools and they shared it, we adopted it. We use a catch slogan and we call it ignore the door. Because we like to feel that we're here in the South and our Southern hospitality, that if somebody comes to the door and they need to be let in, we do it. But this is the day that we can't do that. So these face the students and staff on the inside, and we teach them, remember that slogan, ignore the door. If somebody comes to something other than the front, they need to be screened in and buzz in appropriately. And that's just something that I started probably about 4 or 5 years ago. The old saying is, you inspect what you expect. And once we started that, I would put on jeans and a t-shirt and a ball cap and just act like I'm any old Joe on the street. And I would try to come in and see how many doors I can get in. And when I first started that, out of 45 schools, I think we were 50% or a little bit more, 55%, that I found an unsecured door. And that's what sparked all these type things. And it's just a matter of, especially the one where somebody just wants to open the door for you, teaching them to don't open it, there's a procedure. And that's the training piece. I think I shared earlier with a story. I'd love to just share that story real quick, and I'll hit the door access control in a minute. When I was going around probably in the second or third year, and we were improving, we went from 55 like to 35. I was like, we're on the right track. The principals are teaching the kids, teaching the staff not to open doors, and making sure those things are latched or using the safety dots. It's working. And then finally, in just last year or the year before, I got it down to where I can only get in about 10%. And I still want that big old zero. That's what I want. But in the second year I did it, wondering, principals that get so busy, are they teaching this? And I actually pulled up with my jeans on one day, and the first door I came to was an elementary school, and it was near a library. And I went up and I couldn't get in. I was so happy. Okay, the door's locked, it's secure. But if I ever see a student, I'm going to knock and I'm going to test it. It could have been like, I think it was probably a third grader, little girl. And I knocked on the glass, and she turned and looked at me. And she didn't even walk toward the door. And I could see it. I'm going to say it kind of soft, just to give you an idea of what I saw. She sat there and she went, go around. And let me tell you, I did the same thing you just did, which is I laughed, but at the same time, it warmed my heart. Because I knew two things. Number one, that principal did exactly what I asked him to do. And number two, the students received that information and took it to heart, and why it was so important. One of my favorite stories I love to teach. And we get so, when we start talking about safety and security, we're always really focused on the capital stuff. Sometimes it's just the teaching stuff. And it, just like I said, it warms the heart when something so simple, you see evidence that it was taught and it was accepted and it was done. And like I said, it's just, that story always warms my heart. I chuckled the very first time when I saw it, but at the same time, I was so glad that they were doing it. The last part of your question. So we've been doing those things, but now there's something out there called door access security. And I'll just use my hands to there are mechanisms that you can put on the doors, the magnets that when it comes to that when they meet, those doors are wired in such a way, and then the technology information that as long as they're touching, if they ever do not touch, almost like a timing mechanism for a light that comes on outside, you can dial in that sensitivity that if they're not touching for any length of time, it will send to the smartphone of the principal and say, you have 30 some odd doors, and it'll identify the door, and they'll say gym doorway number 1, and they're all marked. They have numbers of different areas, is ajar. And some of the things we are having to learn with that system, I think we got 6 districts, and we're down to our last district that we're doing right now. And it's just a matter of tweaking it. We know it works, but sometimes we got to dial that sensitivity. We learned very quickly that a student going outside that's holding a door for its class to go through, if that's held for 45 seconds to a minute, that might be what's going on. So it's just dialing it down so that the principal's not getting updates constantly, and that's what we're having to work through. But the technology does work. So it's just one more thing that, and I certainly say to anybody out there, door access control, look that up. You got several vendors out there. But in the meantime, if that's a big thing, go back through the ignore the door and yellow safety dots in the meantime. That's a good way I've always said 3 things most important. There's a lot of things out there, can you secure your doors? Do you have SROs? And can you meet the mental health needs of your students?
Absolutely. I love hearing from practitioners like you and, the wonderful work that you do. And your nomination material was submitted by your wife, who is a teacher at a school in the district, but it was also accompanied with recommendations from your superintendent, a school board member, a local sheriff, and a former principal who currently has children in a school district. So you really have support from all stakeholders. And I'm just curious, what did it mean to you when you heard you were nominated for Campus Safety Director of the Year? And, hearing, I'm not sure if you saw all the letters that everyone wrote for you, but it must be nice to hear.
Well, I certainly appreciate my wife first and foremost. One of the things I'll share with you, I've been very fortunate in my career, I should say 2 careers, that I am a 32-year Army National Guardsman. And after 9/11, I got into it in 1986 with money for college, put in my 6 years and loved it and decided to stay with it. I was an engineer officer and then eventually deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan looking for IEDs. So just, training and security methods for our vehicles on the roads, camera system on those vehicles. I actually had the opportunity to be a director of transportation, and it surprised me as we have so many of our buses that have cameras on them now for different odd reasons. I just saw so much one career complemented the other. Things I would learn in the school system, I got to apply in the military. Things in the military I could apply in the school system. So I am super fortunate to have had 2 careers to do what I love to do, safety and security for others, whether it be those in Iraq and Afghanistan and the rural populations, or right here in Buncombe County, North Carolina, protecting kids. What did it mean to me? It means the same thing that I think so many people, when you pour your heart into something that you enjoy doing, is the acknowledgement that somebody appreciates you. And that's what meant to me the most, that my wife did that, and that so many of my colleagues up here at each level, board members, the superintendent, got involved with it and wrote me letters. I do, in fact, love this job. I love what I do. And anytime I get a chance to share with others that do the same thing, I always said that, and I coached when I was in school, when I was a teacher and all that. So the old slogan is, the best coaches are thieves. They steal from each other. And I will certainly say in safety and security, I think that goes the same way. I think the more we can share what we do, and we're by all means, I'm not the expert. I will tell you, there's stuff I learn all the time, and I could certainly take a lot more time, and I won't do that. But things that I've done here that I learned from other school systems. But that's what we're about, sharing. And it's so important when we get a chance to go to these conferences in Atlanta, I think, coming up, even here in our own state, to have that networking and share what we've learned. But yeah, it meant a tremendous amount to me that somebody said, we think enough of Joe Hough to make a recommendation, and I'm certainly very appreciative.